we've got the Yamaha R-N1000A network stereo receiver bench test results. That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Hey folks, I'm Gene Dellasello with Audioholics. So I did a bench test on the new Yamaha stereo R-N1000A stereo receiver about 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I did that bench test. And last year, at the end of the year, we gave it product of the year for its category because it is a really cool product. It's got some great features. I want to go over the bench test results with you guys, and I'm going to do a separate video where I do some listening tests. I've got this one in-house. I also have the Arcam A25 Integrated Amp. Did bench test results on that last year. So I'm going to do kind of a listening comparison in a separate video. But let's go over these bench test results now. And you can see the receiver here. Now, what really makes this product different from most stereo receivers on the market is the fact that it has an HDMI ARC input on it. So you could plug this directly into your TV and do all your streaming from the TV apps into this receiver. You could set this up with a TV now and have a really good two-channel system, but also have it functional for your TV to enhance the sound. Because let's face it, if you can't put a multi-channel speaker system in your room where you watch TV, then aside from like a sound bar, your other option is to do a two-channel system like this with an integrated receiver that has the ability to interface with it. And you're going to get much better sound quality using this than you would out of a sound bar. So this is a great option if you want to consider, if you've got a really nice pair of tower speakers or bookshelf speakers and you want to enhance your TV viewing experience, this receiver will do that. It also has MusicCast in it, so it has its own music management system that's controllable via app. And it's a pretty good system. So Yamaha now put this into their two-channel receivers. That's a new feature for a product like this. It also has bass management. And that's a really useful feature because in past products like the AS-801 Integrated Amp, it had a subwoofer output, but I think it was fixed at like 90 hertz or 80 hertz or even higher than that. This actually has the ability to set the high-pass filter and low-pass filter through the MusicCast app. So that's a great feature for anyone that wants to add a subwoofer. It has delay, it has all that capability along with its YPow stuff that it does. So here's the back panel of it. I wanted to show you guys. It's got pretty decent connectors for the speaker terminals. You could do speaker A or speaker B, and these are wired in parallel. So if you do want to run two pairs of speakers at the same time, you can do that. I would just caution you not to be cranking it out if there's two sets of 4-ohm speakers, because then the amp will see a 2-ohm load since it's wired in parallel. But we also have a network connection, which I used for MusicCast, Ethernet connection. The TV ARC, like I was telling you before, it has coax and Toslink inputs, so you could do your digital sources, and it has a Phono Stage for a moving magnet, and it has a pretty good Phono Stage, and we'll go more into that detail. And here's the internal view. Now, this looks very similar to the AS-801. You can see the dual heat sinks. It's got 12,000 microfarad power supply caps, which you can't see under this circuit board here, this HDMI board. It has the big E-core transformer. Now, if you look, like I was telling you, the AS-801, and I just bring this up as a comparison, it's very similar layout. This, of course, looks a little cleaner because it doesn't have all that HDMI stuff in it. It doesn't have all the MusicCast processing. But this is an integrated amp that I reviewed, gosh, I would say back in 2015. Absolutely love the AS-801. I thought it was a great integrated amplifier. It sounded awesome, had good power in it. So if you really think about it, the R-N1000A is very similar to the AS-801 in its power section. But now you've got MusicCast functionality, you've got HDMI functionality. So it's got more stuff, but it's a very similar kind of product. And the bench test results will show you that as well if you ever do a comparison of the two reviews back to back. So I tested the preamp output using my Audio Precision APX 585. And I wanted to show you guys, if you're using this as a preamp and you have an external amplifier, this has got a really good preamp output section on it. It does 4 volts RMS unclipped. And you can see when you use the analog versus the pure direct, the pure direct is actually much lower distortion, lower noise. It's both measurements are really good. This is a good preamp output on it. You're looking at a difference between 82 dB versus 98 dB, whether or not you use pure direct in terms of synad, the distortion. So excellent result here. If you look at an FFT, this is pretty good. It's not like state of the art, I would say, but 100 dB, the third order harmonic down below the fundamental, that's a good number. There's no humming or anything that's appreciable. There's a good FFT plot here. So it's a clean preamp. And then I did the frequency response, and it's flat from 10 hertz to the limit of my test gear. I think it's a half a dB down at 80 kilohertz. So very clean, very wide bandwidth analog preamp. If you look at the SNR I did on this with a 0 dB FS digital input, 2 volts output, A weighted 111 dB, that is quiet. And that's with pure direct on. That is very quiet. If you turn the pure direct off, it goes to about 106 dB, which is still very good. But it is showing you that Yamaha really does give you better performance with its pure direct feature. They're, getting rid of some of the processing, turning off DSPs, that kind of stuff. And it shows in the measurements. So there is a measurable improvement when you use pure direct. And I would suggest you use that if you really care about those things. So next up, I was looking at the DAC section. I wanted to make sure the roll-off filters were good. There was no nasties. Now, when you use the higher sampling rates, it pushes it way out to the sampling rate, and it's clean. But what really matters most is at 44 kilohertz, which is CD sampling rate. And you can see here it's got a very gentle roll-off, the F15 noise shaping. You can see there's a little residual, probably some clock noise or something in the 44 kilohertz range, but it's down in the mud, 120 dB or so. I don't think any of your dogs or anyone is going to complain about that. Definitely not something to concern about. I always look at the phono analog outputs because people buying a 2-channel amplifier or receiver or integrated amp are probably going to hook up a turntable. And I was pleased with the results, just like the AS-801, using a 5 millivolt input, which is about the level a moving magnet cartridge will produce. The frequency response is ruler flat from 10 hertz all the way out to the limit of my instrument. So that's clean. I saw with the Arcam A25, there was some significant roll-off in the bass region on that. I don't like that. I think I prefer having something like this. And if you need to add a subsonic filter or whatever, you can do that yourself externally. Personally, I think it should at least be defeatable. So I like the fact that this is a linear graph here. The distortion was also good. I measured 0.07%. Now this is, I forgot to put pure direct on, so it's dominated more by noise. And when I tested it with pure direct, I just forgot to actually save the result. I got the figure, it was about a 12 dB improvement. It was like 75 dB sign, and that's really good for a phono stage. A very low distortion phono stage. If you are a vinyl lover, you're going to like using the moving magnet phono stage of this receiver. So looking now at the power amp sections, I did frequency response. It's rated at 100 watts a channel. I measured clean 100 watts a channel at 0.1% distortion. You can see here, it's very linear all the way out to 70 kilohertz is the 3 dB point of the amplifier. Now the FFT, I always look at 1 watt. I look at noise and distortion at 1 watt. So that way you can compare apples to apples between products, and also because the distortion and noise really matter most at low power signal, because you're going to hear that problem more than you're going to hear it at high power. And the FFT here looks okay. It's not as clean as I'd like. So there's some noise pickup in the amplifier section, but it's still, if you look at the second order harmonic, it's still 90 dB below the fundamental. That's really good. I mean, the graph doesn't look superb, It could look better. I've seen better, but this is not something that's going to be a concern for audibility. I want to show you the power sweep test next, the 1 kilohertz power sweep. The first thing I want to say is, like I say with any product that has an impedance selector switch, don't mess with it. Leave it at its default 8 ohm setting, regardless of the speaker loads that you are using, whether you have an 8 ohm speaker or a 4 ohm speaker, or even something that dips lower. Once you set that impedance switch to the low setting, it limits the voltage to the rails and you limit power. It makes that amplifier clip sooner. And that's all done for heat dissipation requirements for UL. And it's not something that you should be using when you're actually plugging in a pair of speakers and doing listening. So I kept the impedance switch on the high setting, the default setting. I'm not telling you how to lower it. I'm not telling you how to change it, because that's a pet peeve of mine. So here's the power sweep test at 1 kilohertz. We're looking at 119, 120 watts at 0.1%, 130 watts, 129, whatever, at 1% with both channels driven. That's really good. It's giving you above their rated spec. I'm happy with that. And then at 4 ohms, we are looking at 180 watts at 0.1%, and 203 watts at 1%. That's some good power out of a 2-channel receiver. And because it has the dual rows of heat sinks, there's lots of surface area, and there's 4 output devices per channel. So this receiver is truly capable of driving 4 ohm speakers. It's happy with it. I've done long-term signals. I didn't hear any weird resonances going on inside. The thing didn't shut off. It didn't get too burning hot. I mean, this is it's well ventilated, and I would make sure you leave good ventilation for it above it and to the sides if you can, because it's got a lot of heatsink area, but it still needs to have good airflow. Here we're looking at the dynamic power test. I use a CEA 2006. It's kind of a way to represent music program material. And you're looking at 265, 260, depending on the channel, of dynamic power, 2 channels driven with 4 ohms. I have the power table here, continuous full power bandwidth. You can see here, it actually delivered more than its 100 watt rating at very low distortion at 0.1% with both channels driven. The 1 kilohertz sweeps, you can see all the results here for 8 ohms and 4 ohms loads. I always do 0.1% and 1%. I consider 1% the fidelity firewall. I wouldn't never spec power above 1%. I prefer to spec it at 0.1% or at the knee of the power graph. And you know what? We got to give kudos to Yamaha. I'm going to talk about the knee again. You can see that this is a 100 watt per channel rated receiver, and they rate it before the knee, as you can see in this graph. So congratulations to Yamaha for being conservative about that on this 2-channel receiver. So lastly, I want to talk about the signal to noise ratio. When I look again at 1 watt on the amplifier outputs, at 0 dB FS digital input in with 1 watt out, we got 90 dB A weighted. That is really good. I consider 80 dB to be acceptable. 90 dB is really good. It's quiet even with high efficiency speakers. Anything above 90 dB is stellar. So Yamaha has really good noise and performance here. So this is a good number at 90 dB. I think the one advantage the Arcam A25 had was it was a little less noisy. The amplifier was, the gain matching between the amplifier and the preamp was a little better. They just optimized noise performance. I think it was about 5 dB better than this, but still, the Yamaha is a beast. It has more high current capability for driving 4 ohm loads than the Arcam, but they're both really good products nonetheless. And you can see with the Phono Stage at 1 watt, I still got 75 dB. That's really good, A weighted for Phono Stage, like I was telling you guys before. It's got a good Phono Stage, better Phono Stage than the Arcam A25. I did not think that was a strong point of that product. And it's a cool looking product. So the only complaint I have, and even though this is a bench test report, is I think their volume control is hot garbage. There were a couple of times when I was turning the volume control up and down to change my sweeps, and I heard a weird rubbing sound, and I thought something was wrong with the product, but it just turned out there's no ball bearings on the volume control. And I'm a stickler for that, because call me old school or whatever, I like a good hefty volume control that's got weight and good glide to it. I remember that from all the receivers from back in the 70s and 80s. That was like the thing. You would go up to it in the store and ooh, the volume control feels really smooth. And even like the older Yamaha AV receivers, like the DSP-A1 and the RXV1, those had the pimpest volume controls on them. They even lit up, and they were just really smooth and a gliding kind of thing. And some of their higher end hi-fi stuff is like that. So I think Yamaha could have spent an extra couple of bucks and put some ball bearings in that volume control, because when you're dealing with 2-channel and you're dealing with audiophile, appearances do matter and tactile matters. So that's my biggest complaint about the product. We're going to be doing more coverage of it. I'm going to give you my audio results, driving some Revel speakers in the guest room, and then you'll have the full report on this product. So guys, I hope you like this video. Please hit the thumb up. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/audioholics. We appreciate your support. And until next time, my friends, keep listening.